All right, board members, you have the agenda in front of you. If there is someone that would be willing to move approval of this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Lynn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. So first item under number 4, recognition. I'm not certain who's doing that. Sandy. All right, Sandy. Sandy, I'm not sure your mic is on. No. There you.
We'll use Mr. Erickson's mic then and see. All right, I'm going to ask our winners. So I know Cindy and John are here. So if you'd come up to the standing mic here, please, while I'm doing some brief overviews. The district is very excited to have 3 Herb Cole winners again this year. The Herb Cole Education Fellows are chosen for their superior ability to inspire a love of learning in their students, their ability to motivate others, and for their leadership and service within and outside the classroom. The foundation was established in 1990 and has awarded 2,000 fellowships to teachers throughout Wisconsin. The foundation annually awards 100 teachers fellowship grants. Hudson's proud to announce 3 of our outstanding teachers are the recipients of this year's Herb Cole Award. So, Mr. Amon, John Amon, is a high school social studies teacher. John has taught advanced placement U.S. history for over 10 years, and for the last 6 years has taught only the AP class. The first year he taught the course, there were 2 sections with slightly over 30 students. A decade later, there are nearly 180 students. I'm going to get emotional. 180 students enrolled in AP history, almost half of the junior class. Is that impressive? John's philosophy is based on the idea that all individuals have inherent value and all students can learn. John works to encourage participation of all students in his AP class. 5 years ago, John was chosen as a reader for the annual advanced placement reading for U.S. history. He has attended the reading annually ever since and is hoping to advance to a leadership position within the reading. Congratulations, John. I don't know if you can pull that up if you want to say a few things. You're welcome to say a few things, but you probably need to pull the mic up a little bit.
Really close, John.
Pretty good.
Uh-uh.
I do want to thank, the board administration. I know I sent Larry an email, about a week ago, and we discussed, the support that I've received from the school board, from administration, and central office, from in my building, from former principal Ed Lucas and current principal Laura Love, and then certainly we discussed, the other people that are involved with the AP program, the teachers, and certainly the students and parents. It makes it pretty easy to teach at Hudson High School. You get the level of support that we get. So certainly appreciate all of that. And I wouldn't have certainly received this award without that support. So appreciate all of it.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Cindy Mitchell is also here. Cindy is a Strive teacher at the high school. Cindy holds the enduring belief that all students can and will learn. As an alternative educator, she helps students discover their own strengths and styles. She sets high expectations and provides opportunities and a safe place for each student to achieve competence and personal growth. Cindy teaches inner discipline and encourages students to make their own decisions, to solve their own problems, and to take responsibility for their actions. She views mistakes as learning opportunities. With her students, Cindy has reached out to the community and made connections with local and professional groups, and together have raised thousands of dollars for charity through their annual birdhouse construction project. Last year, Strive also created Fab Tab bracelets out of recycled pop tabs and raised over $6,000 for charity. Congratulations, Cindy.
It was.
Yeah, it's on. It's not working, Cindy.
That whole system.
Hello. Okay. I wasn't prepared to speak tonight. I was homesick today. I know everybody's been sick, but I'm thrilled to receive this award, and I couldn't do it without a lot of mentors. And I'm looking around Nancy right here. I mentioned you recently in a presentation I did with the staff. Nancy was Director of Student Services when she hired me as an EBD teacher here 26 years ago. And she told me something that stuck with me. And Nancy, I believe I did say this to some staff. I've hated you ever since, but it was a joke. Because she said, Cindy, just remember, the better the lesson, the better the behavior. And that's a real burden on a teacher, but it's also a real calling for a teacher to raise their level of expectations with students. And I really, really try and live that every single day. And I know when the behavior's not so great, I look at myself and say, what can I do better tomorrow? Sometimes it's not always my fault, but I will accept that. But I really do try every day. I told the staff recently at a staff development, I said, guys, when you're driving home every night, reflect on everything you do so that you can come in tomorrow and be better. And I feel very honored to work with these students that a lot of districts leave behind, and Hudson is certainly not one of those districts. We really embrace all of our kids, including our at-risk learners, and I thank you for all of your support and for letting our STRIVE program exist for 18 years. And so I look forward to keeping on. It's hard work, but I thank you all very much for this.
Thank you.
And I will give some information regarding our third recipient, Michael Yell. Mike is a middle school social studies teacher. His philosophy in teaching practice is to tap into the natural curiosity and energy of his students, engage his students with active, thought-provoking strategies, and help them feel the joy of learning. He wants to help his students become caring, thinking people and good students in our democracy. Mike works hard to make a personal contact with each of his students every day. Mike has co-authored books, done research for national publications, served on the board of directors of the Wisconsin Council for the Social Studies for many years, and also served as the president of the National Council for the Social Studies for the 2008-09 school year. Mike received national board certification in 2003 and plans to go through the recertification process in 2013. Congratulations to Mike as well.
I want to also congratulate our award winners, John and Cindy and Mike. Certainly they exemplify the very best in teaching and learning, and we're very fortunate to have them as teachers in the Hudson School District. They not only inspire students, they inspire their colleagues as collaborative models for them. So we're very, very fortunate, and I know we look forward to sharing their time when they receive their Cole Award. I believe it's Sunday. Is it March 25th? And so that'll be a wonderful occasion for them and for their families.
Thanks, Mary. We are now in the superintendent's report, so I will turn it back to you, Mary, to update us on the three items on your section of the agenda.
All right, thank you. I'll start with hours of instruction. The Department of Public Instruction has identified days and hours of instruction at each level that we are required to meet. And when we have school closures regularly for inclement weather at times, we have to watch those hours and see where we are in relationship to time in class for students. And so knowing that we have had a late start on January 23rd, so that's 2 hours of decreased instruction, and then a full day, inclement weather day, on February 29th, that results in just 2 additional hours at the high school that we have left above the required hours. So should we have another day for school closure for any reason, then there would be makeup time for students and for staff. At the middle school, we're over and have over 2 days left. The elementaries, we have even more time left. So that's where we are at the present time. I just want to thank and recognize Nancy Sweet, who is up very early in the morning doing all the background and checking with other districts and with our transportation company, Safeway, to prepare for a call for me about 5 or 5:15 in the morning so that we can make a final decision, which is often more difficult than people realize, to actually decide to close the school or to have a late start at 5 in the morning. If we could count on the weather forecast to always be exactly as we've heard it, then that would be a little different. But it is something that we have to predict as well as we can at that time in the morning. And certainly safety is our number one concern for our students and for our staff when we make those decisions. So that's required hours of instruction. Any questions on that one? Otherwise, I'll move along. All right, the next one is the April 3rd referendum information sessions. We have 3 information sessions scheduled. We've had 2 of those already. One on February 27th at North Hudson, and we had over 50 participants attend that session. There was standing room only. And then we had another one on March 8th at Willow River, and we had a much smaller turnout, under 20 at that one. We have put the PowerPoint and the information on our website. There's also a link to a video of that, those information sessions, thanks to Hudson Patch. And we certainly appreciate the Hudson Star Observer and Meg Heaton for covering those, as well as Mike Foley from Hudson Patch. So we appreciate that. We have one more left on March 27th, Tuesday, March 27th, at 7 o'clock in the evening, and that's right here at Rivercrest. As we have fielded questions following those sessions, one of the questions that has come up a couple times and even came up last night at the school board candidate forum was whether we can really use the 90,000 square feet that we've talked about repurposing at the St. Croix Meadows facility that is part of the April 3rd referendum to purchase that property. And people have questioned that. And so my response to that I thought might be important for other people to hear was when I toured the facility, when we went through it the first time, I also questioned whether we could use any of that facility. And I remember coming back to the board and saying publicly that it was a deteriorating building and I didn't think we would be able to use any of it. And then we had engineers look and assess that building. And they're the experts. And from their reports and their examination, it became very clear to us that the 90,000 square feet was usable, that the building was very sound and solid, the foundation, the stairwells, and the interior of the building, the structure itself. So I became a convert at that point, as other people did, that the 90,000 square feet is usable space that we'll be able to take advantage of with the passage of the referendum, and I thought that would be important for me to share. I would also point out to one of our local people, Angela Popenhagen from Stevens Engineering, also said when she reported to the board that when she went through the building as well and looked at the infrastructure, that it was built to last. And you know, they invested, when they built that property, over $40 million in that property. And it was built very well, and we're able to take advantage of that. So significant advantage as we look at making that, the possibility of making that a future school. Any questions about the information sessions? All right. Oh, you timing me over there, Diane? Drawing of names, the order of the candidates, board candidates on the ballot. As you can see, I think up on the screen behind us, the candidate order was drawn. This is a random selection process that we use for both the primary and the general election. For this particular order, Loa Seza, who is the assistant of Tim Erickson, drew the names, and the two witnesses were Tim Erickson and Diane Radel. So it was a random selection drawing of the names that produced the 6 candidates in order on the ballot that you can see behind me. Any questions on that?
No.
And that's what I have for this evening.
All right. Thank you, Mary. We are moving into the report section of the agenda, and the first item in the report section is an update on the middle school SMART Goal strategy. Mr. Koch.
Yep. Okay. I'll bring it back down to you. I'm going to croon. First of all, we're pleased to be here before you tonight to have the opportunity to report on some of the progress we've been making toward our building-wide SMART goal, and want to thank Mary for giving us the opportunity to step up and show you some of what's been going on. I have very little to say, which is probably unusual most of the time, but the thing that I want to impress upon you is that this is a building-wide SMART goal. It's a building-wide SMART goal, which involves every student in our building and all of our faculty as well. So we've undertaken this particular SMART goal on a fairly large scale, and I think if you'll keep that in mind as our folks are going through that, you'll have a greater appreciation for what they're accomplishing as this year has unfolded. And I have before you tonight, we've got Jacqueline Smith, Michelle Miller, Kristen Conrad, and we've got Kate Knott and Chloe Halverson, 2 of our students who are going to participate in the presentation. And with that, I will turn it over, I think, to Michelle. Is that correct?
Great. If we could go to the next slide. We'd just like
really close, Michelle.
Okay, sorry. All right, we'd like to review our building-wide SMART goal. What we're trying to do is increase the number of students who are meeting their growth target on the spring NWA assessment, which shows 1 year of growth from the fall to spring, and we're looking at a 5% increase. And the purpose of the goal is to really improve all the students' reading skills regardless of their starting point. Our goal is connected to the HSD 2025, more specifically the foundational content areas. We believe that reading is a skill that can be applied to every content area, and we really want the students to be successful in using their reading skills no matter what subject area they're in.
See if I can figure it out. Okay, and then once we had our SMART goal, then we formed a SMART goal team, which really consisted of, like Mr. Koch said, every teacher in the building, and required participation of all the students as well. So it was very comprehensive. And then we chose some specific research-based strategies to implement our SMART goal. And so one of them was the daily free readings. We know that children need more reading and more practice to become better, so we have 15 minutes of free reading during their PAT. We have school-wide reading strategy instruction in all the content areas, tech ed, math, health, everything, so that students can really see the literacy connections between disciplines. That's been really powerful. We've had collaborative conversations focused on those reading strategies and that instruction so that teachers can see what was successful, what wasn't successful, and then modify and improve our instruction. And then we've had individual student conferences, which include goal setting and monitoring of their progress, and then lots of different reading activities and incentives across the building to kind of build that culture of literacy. But tonight we're going to really focus on the student conferencing piece where the students set their own goals and monitor their progress. And based on what we know about assessment, which we've been working on for the past couple of years, we know that it really helps to have the students involved in the assessment piece and to really be a collaborative partner with the teacher. So this isn't something that's done to the students or for the students, but it's really done with a partnership of teachers and students.
All right, so why are we having students involved in the process? We know that it really increases their motivation in their own work. They take ownership in their learning. It helps students focus on their achievements and areas that they need to improve. It also encourages students to take responsibility for improving their own learning. So to begin our SMART goal, we first really had to decide how often are we going to assess the students and to monitor their progress. In the 2010-11 school year, we tested in September and also then again in the spring for the summative assessment. We did decide to add the midpoint assessment, which takes place in January, as well as 2 checkpoint assessments, which are shorter 20-question assessments that gives us a quick look at how the students are doing at that point in time in November and March. After taking the baseline assessment, the students are given a goal-setting worksheet, if you'd like to go to the next page. Every student in the building who takes the baseline assessment has a original score. So if you look at this particular student, their baseline score was 243. Based on national norms, there's an average score attached with each of those numbers, and this student had a growth target of 2. Which would give them a a RIT target score of 245 for their spring test. So that's what we would like to see that student achieve. In order to keep track of how the students are doing on each of those 5 assessments that we showed in a previous slide, we created a progress monitoring template for each advisor in the building to use. Every student in the building is attached to an advisor, and so that's one way that we can easily keep track of the students and how they're doing. So you can see here that they have a place to mark their baseline RIT as well as their growth compared to the baseline on every assessment that they take throughout the year. This is where we kind of decided that it's really important to share this information with the students, and to do this we really wanted to set aside time where teachers could meet one-on-one with the students so that it wasn't we only have 15 minutes during our advisory times, which is a pretty short amount of time. So what we decided to do is modify our late start schedule so that the first hour and 10 minutes is devoted to the student conferencing and goal setting. We use this time to share the information with the students. In previous years, we did not share NWEA data. And again, we believe that by sharing this information, it would really motivate them and they would understand why they're taking the test and what they're working toward, which is their reading skills and how they can improve them. So, for example, here we have Jane Smith, and their, again, baseline score, 243. Their growth target is 2, which would give us a 245. We have the checkpoint assessment in November. The student charts again their baseline score of 243. At the checkpoint, they have a 244, which shows a growth of 1. And then we just calculate the total growth. And we go through the same process for each of the 3 following assessments. And that really helps the students to see when they're growing. And if they haven't grown, we can talk about why. You see the spot there for new goal. That would be for a student who may reach their growth target early on in the school year, and so we actually want to push them to go beyond that, and so we create a new score for the student. We also would like them to have a visual of their progress, so we have them chart their progress on a graph, and so this is the same student. If you want to just click through. So that they can visually the progress that they're making. Can you go to the next slide? The next step is working with the student to have them identify what areas that they, in a reading skill that they really believe they have a strength, and then one area that they would like to improve. And this particular sheet has skills that are from the Common Core State Standards. So, for example, a student might say that they are have a strength in giving examples from the text to show that they understand what they have read, but are struggling maybe in summarizing the main idea of a reading. And so we put together a list of actions that the student could take in order to reach their goal, and we have the student choose 3 or modify one that's up there, or possibly something of their own, and then they place it in that bottom box. If you click again. So this really allows the student to see you're not just looking at the numbers, you're thinking about, okay, what's behind the numbers, what are the skills I personally need to work on, and what will I do to actually improve my skills. After the checkpoint, we actually have the students complete a reflection, working with their advisor. Each advisor is also paired with another teacher in the building, so every teacher is involved. And so while the teacher is conferencing, there is another teacher in the room with the other advisory students, kind of monitoring the goals that they are developing. The students are reading, and they're also providing book recommendations to other students. And so we also have them fill out a reflection that kind of really has them think about their progress, and did those steps that they took make a difference in their score, and would they continue those actions or create new ones. So we actually have a short video clip, and what you'll see in the video is a very Jacqueline is the one leading the conference, and it's a student who the very first conference, so she's sharing with them the baseline score, and then the target growth, or the target score, and the growth target, and then also talking a little bit about the goal setting form. Oh, is there volume?
I can quick act it out. Well, at this point, I'm pointing out what her baseline RIT score was, and then what her goal is going to be.
Not very well. Looks like there's some room for more volume.
Okay. So after pointing out what her original RIT score was and what her end of the year goal was going to be, I briefly showed her the goal setting sheet that she'd be working with, and currently she is preparing the graph that was on the backside. And now I'm going into more detail about picking out things that she believes are her strengths, things that she thinks that she could work on, and then specific actions she's going to take to improve her reading ability.
And we brought Jacqueline and 2 students tonight. We'd like them to share a little bit about the experience and the power of the conferencing from an instructional level as well as from the student learning level.
Okay, well, as I was introduced, I'm Jacqueline Smith, and I teach 8th grade U.S. history. And I just want to talk about the power I have seen come out of student conferencing. As Michelle had said, before this school year, we didn't share NWEA data with our students. We never took time to focus on what the students could do to improve by the end of the school year. And so this year, with the power that's coming from conferencing, I'm seeing some really amazing things come out of my advisory students in terms of their focus on the NWEA tests, but also on their focus on reading in my core class. So I want to just talk about 2 students briefly. The first is a young man who has never really cared about his score, and very often doesn't really care about school. He struggles inside the classroom and out as well. And at the last conference we had before our checkpoint, he looked at me and said, "You know what? I don't really try on these tests because they've never really mattered to me before, and I didn't care what I was doing on them. This time I really want to see what I am capable of, so I'm going to try." When he finished taking that checkpoint test, the very first thing he said to me is, "I think I did really good. I know I beat my last score. Do you know what my goal was. Did I beat that? So when I was able to tell him that from the last checkpoint to this one, he had grown 16 points, he was very proud of himself and the progress that he had made. On the opposite end of that spectrum, I have a young girl who knows her NWEA score, and if you asked her, she could probably tell you what her NWEA score was in 6th grade. And after the very first assessment at our checkpoint, she had dropped 7 points, and that was absolutely devastating to her. And by having the opportunity to sit down and speak with her one-on-one in the student conference, we were able to come up with some possible causes as to why her score may have dipped, and then specifically what she could work on in terms of her reading strategies to improve on the next test. If I hadn't been able to have that time one-on-one with her, she would have continued to be defeated by the NWEA tests, but she was able to leave the conference knowing that she has the skills, she just needs to use them in a different way. And after all, the conferences that we do, while we do talk about the student score, that's not the purpose of the conference. We want our students to be informed and to take ownership, but it's really an opportunity for us to connect and as a team brainstorm ideas on how they as an individual can improve. To the outside, it doesn't necessarily make sense to cut core class time to have a conversation with a student about a test score. However, it's giving our students ownership, and when they have ownership, they have a personal stake in what they are working towards. And I have found that in my classroom, because of the conferences, the students are more focused on developing those reading strategies and improving their reading ability. And so to me, it's well worth the time that I give up to be able to meet with those students. Thank you.
All right. Next, I think we'll have Kate Knott share some of her outcomes, how the conferences have affected her in the goal setting.
I just want to say that I like conferencing with my teachers because it helps me understand what my NWEA score means and how I can improve on my NWEA score. Talking with my teacher also helps me improve because it teaches me what I need to do to build my score and what I need to do just to basically improve. When I have a goal that they set for us, I need to meet it. Personally, I have to meet that goal. Knowing where I need to go to meet that next goal, it drives me to work harder and to do what I can to reach my goal. I like the positive feedback I get from my advisor, Mr. Dahl, because not only does it make me feel satisfied with getting successful in my goal, but it tells me what I need to do and how I can improve on my next test.
Very nice. Chloe, if you could share a little bit about your experience.
Okay, so it's just really nice to be able to have the one-on-one time with my teachers to be able to ask questions. And because sometimes during a class period, you won't have enough time to actually ask a question to your teacher and get a good answer. But during the conference times, it guarantees that I will have time to meet with my teacher and have the one time to focus on my own personal goals and my learning. And as a beta reader, I sometimes feel that I've kind of reached a peak with my scores, and I can't really quite go beyond that. But having the individual time with my teachers, it really gives me the opportunity to learn what I need to know to improve and set an action plan for what I can do to get better. It provides all students, no matter what their reading level is, to have the direction they need to improve. And the conferencing goal really, it helps me to be responsible for my own learning and motivates me to do what is necessary to improve my reading skills.
Well,
Great.
that's all we have. I don't know if you have any questions. But.
Are there questions from the board?
Barb?
Tom.
First of all, congratulations on great work, and thank you, students, for coming and sharing. Two questions real quickly. I think I know the answer to the second one. First one is that you do this with every student. Every student.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Every student in the building.
Every student. So I think it kind of reinforces the need to keep a good student-teacher ratio so that this is possible. Mm-hmm. So there's a little commentary there. But secondly, the question is, and I think I may know the answer to this, but these, the overall goal collectively is 5% growth, I think, from 58% to 63% in reading. Is it true that each individual student has their own individual goal, which might go beyond 5% for some and less than 5%, or is it a 5% growth for across the board?
What we're looking at is increasing, the 5% is how many students actually meet or exceed their own personal growth target.
Yep, got it. Thanks.
So.
Thanks.
And just a side note, the growth target that is given to the student is based on an average from national norms. And so it's not a typical growth, it's actually an average growth.
Other questions?
Madam President,
Madam.
can you tell me, maybe you already said it and I just didn't hear it, how long does each of those individual conferences take?
Well, when we first started, they took about 2 to 3 minutes to just have that one-on-one to share those original scores, but we're looking at actually extending the time of the conferencing as more information has kind of built throughout the year as we've gone along and we have more to share with the students. We're looking at maybe extending it because they have been, some of them have been cut short or brought into the PAT or advisory time.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right, Mary.
I was in the building when they were conferencing, I think for the first time, and I was quite amazed. When you think of almost 1,300 students and their teachers having individual conferences together, that personalization that it represents, and empowering the students to be part of the learning team to help them learn and grow. It sounds when we focus on talking about scores, that it's about scores. It isn't about scores at all. And Jacqueline, you made that point that I think is a really important one. This is a reflection of the students' learning. And it's one of the assessments that I know that they use at the middle school. But certainly kudos to you for this level of personalization.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like our next report will be Mr. Koch and Principal Love on the middle school and high school enrollment growth and some secondary space updates.
Okay. Certainly there's a lot of information out about constraints for learning. So I thought it was important you have some specifics regarding the high school. So I put together some notes on high school space for learning constraints. You're already aware that we have space issues in our common areas. Especially crowded are hallways during passing times and the cafeteria during 3 separate lunches. Aside from those areas that are crowded, the following spaces for learning are constrained or restricting course offerings for students. The classrooms in core areas. Over a third of the core area courses are already above class size guidelines approved by you. Most of these classrooms are smaller than the recommended square footage for the number of students. This restricts the type of learning that goes on, as well as the increase in class sizes to keep staffing costs from increasing with our increase in student numbers. The Library Media Center. This is built for a student body less than half our size. It is very limited resource for student learning, and it's used heavily throughout the school day. Computer lab spaces. We're currently so limited on the number of computer labs that this resource cannot be one that the teachers count on using when students need access for classwork. In some classes that require computers, the number of computers limits the course option for students, and or the space available for computers limits that as an elective choice for students. Examples include the areas of business and information technology as well as art. Art classrooms. The art areas are so small for instruction and materials that some classes have to be taught in partial classrooms and some extend into 2 classrooms at the same time with 1 teacher. choir classrooms, and music practice areas. While the auditorium is a wonderful space for performance, our choir rooms are not big enough, and we currently do not have enough spaces for our students to have lessons. Choir classes can be as big as 80 to 130 students in one section, and the choir room comfortably fits about 65 students. Collaborative learning spaces. Again, the auditorium is a great space for large performances and presentations. It's designed to hold about 750 students. We're in desperate need of collaborative learning spaces that include groups of about 50 to 100 students for things like academic support for AP students, activities having guest presenters for 50 to 100 students, like an author visit, integrated academic activities, and even outside classes like driver's education. PE and athletic spaces. During the year, even within the school day, we are so limited on PE spaces that we have some classes meeting in the commons outside the office areas. Our schedules are very restricted for this required course offering that if we didn't have summer school, we could not schedule all the students in physical education in gym spaces. Ms. DeVos has consistently shared data on the athletic use of spaces. The indoor spaces are very limited to the point that we have different sports having to schedule practices late into the evening at times to avoid conflict with other sports. Even in the summer, the lack of gym space is restricting for secondary programs, including summer school and Raider Elite that serves hundreds of students every day. Science lab spaces. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. We have a third year of required science coming down the pike in the state, in addition to a growing student body. Currently, we have 12 full-time science teachers. Only 6 are in science lab classrooms. This not only limits the amount of labs we can get students doing hands-on, but it also limits the kind of offerings we can have for students. There are courses we can't currently offer in science because of lab space issues. Courses like AP Biology and the Biomedical Sciences Pathway for Project Lead the Way are examples of this. Things are bad today, but they're getting worse. Next year, we have about 50 students more estimated to join the student body over this year's current high school enrollment. This will add to already crowded classrooms in the core areas. It will increase the crowding hallways, cafeteria, and other common areas. It will diminish the course offerings we have for all students based on the limited spaces available. Although the spaces for learning are cramped, they will get worse within the current facility. Thank you for listening. Questions for me?
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay.
Use the other one.
I tried. Is that better?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Well, Laura, you have some problems. Okay. And you're right, it's going to get worse because we've got them right now. Okay. And I've come at this just a little bit differently, and I just like to kind of start through this, and if you'll bear with me, I think it'll make some sense at the end. But they are generally content. They're usually truthful. They're quick to anger, quick to forgive, and their handwriting is often sloppy, and their keyboarding is erratic. They like group activities. They enjoy teams and teamwork. Basically, they're cooperative. They love to teach younger children. They enjoy being noticed, and they have quick tempers, and they're also abundant tears. They're moody, sensitive, oppositional, often do their best work away from home. Social cliques are everywhere. They need a lot of sleep. They're impulsive. They're unaware. They're argumentative. They imitate adults. They enjoy hands-on learning, and it's critical for their moving forward. They learn well in cooperative groups. They desire to test limits. They all think they're grown up. They're enthusiastic, uninhibited. They're empathetic, self-aware. They can set realistic goals. They appear secure, but they're not. Their peers are more important than adults. Sarcasm emerges. Abstract thinking is also emerging. Academic skills are increasing. Leadership qualities are beginning to be evident. And assignments over longer periods of time are more palatable. High physical energy, voice changes, and continued growth spurts. Very aware of neatness of their personal appearance. That's important to them, but their personal environment they don't really care about. Touchy. They like to be alone at home. Technology, phones, games, that consumes their time. One-word answers to adult questions. Street language is important. Tentative approach to difficult intellectual tasks. They like to challenge the social authority. Peer pressure influences choices. Experimentation is prevalent. They're loud. It's the know-it-all period. They're a pain at home and a star at school, or they're a pain at school and a star at home. They're capable of abstract reasoning. They're aware of problems in the world, and they're very interested in finding solutions. And they're often embarrassed to be with their family. Work to them is boring, which translates many times into, I don't really understand it. Humor is more differentiated. Career interests are emerging, and they require space. They require lots of space. They're growing. They require space so we can meet their academic, social, emotional, and physical needs. These are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. These are middle schoolers. And if I put it another way, these are 10 to 14-year-olds, and we have 1,307 of them under one roof. We're very much aware of the challenges that face middle-level learners. Now, we have had some success, and I know that you've become aware of that. And our success most recently has been identified as, a middle school of excellence. That's happened largely because of the staff that we have working in our building, their commitment to kids, and the organizational template that I have said time and time again when I've come before the board that this community had the wisdom to pursue a number of years ago. I'm hopeful this community has the wisdom to pursue some of those same needs now that will reap benefits for us for many, many years to come. Our success depends upon our ability to personalize the educational experience for our students. It depends upon our ability to help our youngsters learn about collaboration and teamwork. It depends upon our ability to communicate with students in a language that they understand. Example, student-friendly learning targets, things that they understand and know how to pursue. Our current space for learning has become an issue. We are in a building that was designed for 1,125 students, and next year we will have 1,307 in the building. That's too many. Something needs to be done about that. We are always aware of something called social distance. And I want to make my point this way. Most of the general classrooms in our building are about 750 square feet. The standard is somewhere around 900 or just a little bit above. We know we are pressed into what I would consider to be emergency measures from time to time by increasing class sizes. And Tom, you made an excellent point that the student-teacher ratio is fundamental to success at every level in our district. But when you increase the number of students that we're putting into a classroom that has 750 square feet, generally speaking, that creates problems for the learning environment. That makes it much more difficult. Our room utilization right now is hovering right at 94%. That's an amazing level of efficiency in a building our size. We believe that we really can no longer sustain some of the efforts that we have been putting into the student experience if this continues at the rate it's going. We have 16. I know, Mary, we talked earlier about the number being 14, but I'll explain this. There are 16 teachers who do not have their own classroom. 14 of those teachers are on carts and move around the building from room to room. You're well aware that we're using 3 classrooms at Hudson Prairie Elementary. I think it should be fairly clear that the space issues that we have need to be looked at, they need to be resolved, and it appears that we're in at a point in time where this community can indeed do something about that to benefit generations of students to come. We're interested in continuing to be a middle school of excellence. In order to do that, a lot of things have to come together. It's sort of this nexus of many things coming together at the same time. We have students who are capable. We have students who are willing. We have a staff that is highly trained and qualified and in pursuit of improving their professional practice. We need a facility for that to occur in. We need to continue to move in that direction. The houses that we have were designed for 125, and I'm just going right to houses because I know you know the concept, designed for 125 students. Next year in 6th grade they will average 148, in 7th grade they'll average 142, and in 8th grade they'll average 148. That's too many kids. It's also closed in on the common space that we have in each of those house areas. We've added 28 lockers in every one of those house areas over the last few years. Those house common areas are areas that are typically used by students for collaborative work, to get together and produce projects and work in that space. We've begun to shrink, that available space. We're very, very grateful for the construction that occurred in our building just a couple of years ago. It has really benefited us in a variety of ways. Phys ed space has been much improved. The lunchroom situation has been much improved. The orchestra situation has improved as well. But the band situation and the choir situation have not. We have rooms in which we're putting, 107 band members that are designed for between 60 and 70. We have choir rooms where we're putting almost 100 students that are designed for around 60 to 70 students as well. We have outgrown this facility in many respects. I think the last comment that that I would make is that we continue to press our staff and our students to perform at high levels. We think there needs to be a commensurate effort coming from the community to support our effort with those kids to get them as far along that continuum as possible. I think the time is right. The opportunity is before us. Decisions can be made by this community, as I said before, will impact this community for years to come. And I think through careful consideration and processing of the information, we should be able to meet the needs of our students down the road. So, any questions?
Are there questions? No.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, Dan.
Madam Chair, thank you. Thanks for that presentation, by the way. And my concern goes back to Dan when you mentioned the personalized experience, which I think, is the hallmark of the middle school experience. And when you start increasing the numbers, you start seeing the deterioration of that personalized experience. The one area that I didn't hear discussed very much is the whole technology area and how that's wanting as a result of what's happening at both the middle school and the high school. Can you talk about that a little bit? And what brings it to mind for me is I was watching the 60 Minutes last Sunday, and they talked about this Khan Academy and how that's helping students. But they showed these classrooms where these students had access to, all kinds of technology, and I became very envious of that kind of setting. So can you talk about that piece and how that's being impacted with what's happening in our schools?
You're absolutely right. I mean, the work that we're trying to do is obviously paralleled by the ability for us to have technology available to our students. We have, and Sandy has played kind of an important role in this, in the process of redesigning curriculum, redesigning the programs that we offer in the building. We have been incorporating more and more technology. The key to this is not really technology for teachers to dispense information. The key is for students to be able to pursue their own learning. And when you follow that logically through, if they have the opportunity to use technology to pursue their own learning, then teachers have the opportunity to extend those experiences and to help students make connections between the things that they are discovering and learning along the way. We have increased the number, and I'll just focus on this, we have increased the number of computers in our building that are available to our students. We are still, I think, woefully behind, in doing that. And we still have situations where we're locked into computer labs that have basically 30 seats, and that's how many students, would have an opportunity to avail themselves of the technology. Beyond that, technology is rapidly proven to be more than just, the laptop or the desktop computer. Pursuing other forms of technology for communication purposes alone. It's something now, I guess, as basic as Skyping is a practice that we have begun to employ, but not nearly at the level that we should, in connecting our kids with not only the world that immediately surrounds them, but the world that is extended around them as well. We have technology, and be honest with you, Dan, we count our blessings. Sometimes when we talk with with people in other schools, other districts, some of the things that they're going through, we do count our blessings with the technology that we have, but we don't count our blessings to the point where we realize there is more that we need to be doing for our kids in that particular area.
Are there any other questions?
Madam President?
I'll just add, at the high school technology, I came from a district where the high school size was about 550 students, so maybe a third of the students. And we had as many computer labs in that high school as we have in Hudson High School for 1,660. As Dan mentioned, technology use is changing, so it's not just about going to a computer, but it's about students being able to create their own work from what they learn. So the access to those computers is great, and the way we feel fortunate is that we have been able to gain wireless access throughout the building. So we really appreciate the technology support that provides, and the opportunity then for students to bring their own devices to the table and also access the internet for search capabilities and for some creation at any time throughout the day. But accessing the computer labs for that many students from that number of teachers is what I mentioned before. They cannot count on accessing labs when the students all need access to computers or to some technology. And some of those students don't have the technology to bring to the school as well. So that's where we're at with high school and technology.
Thank you. Lynn.
Madam President, this is kind of directed more, I think, towards Laura, but maybe you can speak to it too. You mentioned the crowding in the common areas. Are the times that we have for lunch a function of the rest of the curriculum and when it's delivered, or the space and being able to schedule the number of students that we have to get through lunch? Can you talk a little bit about lunch period and how many students are in there, what time we start, what time we end, and if we had a different space, would it be scheduled differently, or is it a function of is it a function of the schedule, I guess?
It's a combination of factors. Right now, we're just at our maximum in the cafeteria. So if we're going to get a lot bigger, we'll come up with some other solutions. We've looked at expanding food service and eating food into the commons, which is disconnected from the cafeteria. That would change the way that space needs to be cleaned, and also just pathways through the space at that lunchtime. Essentially, the 3 lunches are scheduled so that we can maximize learning time and minimize time in transitions. If we add a 4th lunch, we have to look at crossing over more class periods, which takes away from class instructional time. So we're looking at other solutions. I know that open campus was mentioned at some point in time, and I believe that there was a little study done in the community about whether or not open campus would be feasible for the community and for safety to leave the building, go get lunch, and come back. And I would suggest anyone who's thinking about that might want to be at the high school at the end of the day to see how students exit, and maybe at the beginning of the day trying to get into the parking lot takes 5+ plus minutes on a regular basis. So we're looking at options for that. The other question about hallways and common areas, we actually have a little less congestion this year during passing times because of the reduced time. When we had 7 minutes, we had groups of kids congregating at corners, which would bottleneck areas of the building and cause kids to be frustrated. Sure. We have some concern that the level of congestion in common areas can cause more tension, more friction between groups of students, and that can result in altercations of a verbal and or physical nature.
Okay. One more question, Laura.
Yes.
You were talking about, I think you said 1/3 of the core area classes are over class size guideline.
Yeah. Yes.
That's a function of space, not a function of staffing, or?
It's a combination. So because of the budget cuts from last year, had to reduce staffing. So we're trying to maximize the class offerings to students, maintaining the number of electives. And in trying to do that with increasing number of students, you have to increase the class sizes for the classes we do offer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Pat. Okay, we talked about technology, and I was just wondering, would we be able to use, or are we using, as the students have this at home, their telephones, iPods, tablets? I mean, could that be brought to school and we could utilize that instead of the school, having to pay for this or whatever? Is that being done at the high school level and the middle school?
It is at the high school. It's called Bring Your Own Device, or BYOD. And in some classrooms where that's really appropriate to do, we can do that. Some of the devices aren't as conducive to writing research papers and that sort of thing, so that's when the students really need access to computer labs. But many teachers are using handheld devices, iPads, and that sort of device that students bring to the classroom at this time.
So the students are allowed to bring in their own laptop and use them?
They are. They are. There's a process to go through, but they are allowed to do that, yes.
That's good.
And it's the same at the middle school.
At the middle school also?
Yep. Yep.
So they are bringing their iPods and their computers, and so they are. Well, that's good.
Mark.
Thank you, Madam President. Excuse me. Thank you both, Dan and Laura, for your report, and I want to thank you also and your staff for managing so well in an increasingly unmanageable situation. I was making notes as you're both were presenting, and it's hard to know even what to focus on. So many examples of how our buildings are stressed. A library half the size. I find it a personal embarrassment that we don't have AP biology. Unbelievable. The carts in the middle school, the deterioration of the house concept, which I think is one of the, I'm an enthusiastic endorser of that, and I can see that slipping away. We have an opportunity, I think, here to hopefully address this, and I hope the community, which I know values our educational system here, but I think, to steal a term from one of my favorite authors, Malcolm Gladwell, I think we're really reaching a tipping point. And I think that no matter how well you and your staff manage, and you have, it will become increasingly impossible to provide that quality education. So I hope the community recognizes the need and steps up. I believe they will. But once again, thank you for all your efforts.
Just to piggyback off what Mark has said, first of all, thank you. And what I really appreciated about what you shared this evening was the specificity that you provided. I think it's one thing to go to the community and talk about the need for space because our student counts are growing, and that certainly is an incredibly strong argument. But I think when each of you can illustrate some specific ways that the size of the student body in each of the two buildings is beginning to erode the programs that we're delivering, I think it puts a finer point on our argument. So I'm hoping that we could get copies of what you've shared with us this evening that could be made available to the board members and perhaps even to the general public, because I think that creates an even more compelling case for the need for the referendum. All right. Are there any other questions? Thank you both.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda this evening is an update, Mary, with some renderings, some early renderings that you have for a potential building on the St. Croix Meadows property.
And certainly this is a good follow-up to the comments that both of our principals had, the middle school and high school. And I thought it was really important, or we thought it was really important, that our community had the opportunity, as well as the board, to hear from the principals at the last scheduled meeting before the April 3rd referendum, where our community will decide whether to purchase the St. Croix Meadows dog track. So I think behind me is a picture of that property as it is today. This has been a deteriorating property for over 10 years at this point. It's been an eyesore. I remember coming to the community and seeing that and wondering what it was, and having taken visitors around, friends and family. I know many of people in our community have had the experience of driving by and having them ask, what is that? And we have an opportunity on April 3rd to change that from this picture to, and Diane, go ahead and go on to the next one, to a site for a secondary school that addresses the problems that we just heard about at both the middle school and the high school that have been caused by significant growth in our school community and the lack of the facilities to address that growth, space for learning, and also to address the program that we highly value. So this is at the first community information session. We heard from a number of people that they needed to see a visual representation of what a school would look like on the St. Croix Meadows site, a secondary school. And we listened to that feedback and came back and reflected on that and said, well, we can provide that. And you can see that this is a preliminary, and I want to focus on that word or emphasize that word, preliminary drawing of what that site could look like. Certainly you see the resemblance, of course, in the St. Croix Meadows building itself, but it's repurposed in this drawing. You can see the 3 floors. The school on that site would be a 3-story school. You can see the tall towers that are the stairwells, that are large stairwells for a significant number of people to pass through, and certainly they function very well in a large secondary school as well. So it's taking that deteriorating property and repurposing it in a way that can serve our community for years to come. And I know the board has put this forth to the community as the solution, the first step in a solution to our significant growth. You can also see, I think one of the other features that comes through is the significant amount of glass and light that would be in the school on each of the 3 floors. And certainly I think that that's another very, very positive aspect of this building repurposed as a school. So Diane's turned on to the next one, and again, this is, you can see the windows in this version or representation of the entrance of the school building. And as we look at this, you know, if our community passes the referendum on April 3rd and we move forward to the next referendum that we've been talking about after that community engagement process to determine the configuration, and we move forward with the second referendum and that passes, and we have conceptual drawings and eventually a school, it will look much like this, but yet it will also have some differences. So you'll see similarities in this building, and yet you'll see some design features that are not really what we asked for. At this point, we've just colored the building and cleaned it up and made it look like a school. So, and then the last drawing, Diane? Thank you. Certainly this is a way for people in our community to think about and envision the possibilities on this site for the secondary students that both Principal Dan and Principal Laura talked about, and the opportunities that can exist behind these walls for enriched learning experiences for our students that are at least comparable to those in other schools throughout the state of Wisconsin and the Minneapolis metro area as well. So unless there are any questions.
Other questions? All right, hearing none, thank you, Mary. We are at item 7 on the agenda, which is where we invite citizens who request to speak to the board. I do have one citizen's request to speak. Diane, are there others? There are not. Okay, and you've got me all lit up here, Diane. The request that I have is for Dan Bushman. So, Dan, if you want to come forward, and you probably will need to use the microphone that's at the table here, but please introduce yourself, state your name and your address.
See, I was at the candidate forum last night, so I know how important pushing these buttons are.
And then really close when you speak into the microphone. Yeah, even close.
Push the button back out.
Oh.
There, now pull it.
How's that?
Yeah. Good.
Okay. I'm Dan Bushman. I live at 1303 St. Croix Heights. I'm a City of Hudson resident. The reason I'm here is I've been working with the Vote Yes folks real hard. We hope that we get a good turnout and we get a vote yes. Talked to a lot of folks. You are probably the first group of folks that I've talked to that is unanimously going to vote yes. I don't think I have to convince you. However, the reason I'm here is because one of the big issues that we continue to hear is about the UU property. And there's so much bad information and so much opinion and so much I talk to who and I talk to who and I talk to who. And I wanted to read to you, and I'm the kind of person who actually needs to find out facts. I'm the kind of person who, if you tell me how something is spelled, I need to look it up myself anyways. So I wrote a letter to the city of Hudson asking, does the city envision a plan? Does the city have a plan or envision a plan as part of a long-range plan, 5 to 20 years, to extend city sewer and water out far enough to encompass that location? The answer to that question is the city's comprehensive plan does not project extending sanitary sewer water property located south to the UU property through 2030. At this time, the city projects the possibility of annexing Carmichael Road corridor, quarter mile east of Carmichael Road. Please understand the city cannot annex property without petition of the property owners. Thus, the extension of city and sewer water to the UU property will in part be dependent on other properties requesting annexation. Okay. The city isn't going to grow out there. The letter also goes on to say the existing policy is that the Hudson Area Urban City Sewer Sewage Plan of 2020 is that city sanitary sewer does not extend outside the city of Hudson or the village of North Hudson. Okay. It won't grow out there, and they ain't going out there. Okay? Now, because I've been out there pitching what you folks have been telling folks, you go to the state statutes. And under direct annexation by unanimous approval, 6602722, which is how you, lawyers do this all the time. Anyways, it's about how you annex things. It says no territory may be annexed by a city or village under this subsection unless the territory to be annexed is contiguous to the annexing city or village. Okay, so you can't just say there's something about a mile out there. Let's just add that to the city. Okay. Still not believing it. You go to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and that's a group where they look at everything. They kind of simplify it for people who run cities by giving you interpretations. And interpretation 170 under annexation and detachment, proposed annexation of a territory consisting of a 1-foot strip approximately 1 mile long connecting a 40-acre parcel to a property is known as a balloon on a string, a corridor, or a strip annexation which the courts have held does not meet the requirement of contiguity or violates the rule of reason. And this is something that apparently through court cases, this is something that was learned by the town of Mount Pleasant, the city of Racine, the town of Mercenary and the city of La Crosse, the town of Menasha and the city of Menasha. You can't go there, okay? But I'm struck with that whole last phrase, violates the rule of reason. What a way to put that. You've got something that's stuck a mile away from the city, and you want to run a sewer pipe out there, uphill and down, so you can save a couple bucks. And put it on a property which, quite frankly, has the kind of elevations where it wouldn't be a very good property to begin with. The reason I am going through this is because it is hard to put a stake in the heart of that UU property. I wish I knew what in God's green earth the school board was thinking when they bought it in the first place and what they thought they knew. But I came to this conclusion, it doesn't matter now. The fact of the matter is that you can't go there. This city's got a lot of things to do. There are a lot of great issues to be talking about with this dog track. But the UU property has to go. But the UU property should be a dead issue. I'm the kind of guy who looks for facts, and these are the factual things. And I just wanted to come and tell you that it's true. People can sit there and say, well, I talked to the mayor and I talked to the, and if you get together, we can come to some conclusion. Well, I guess you can if you're going to violate state laws. Doesn't sound like something that should be going on. I'm not sure how to conclude this. Just came here. I want to tell you folks, what I would tell you is whoever gets elected to this board, I admire your courage. You folks get beat up like nobody else, okay? You got the toughest job in the world, and God knows if we don't vote yes on this referendum, I don't know why anybody wants to sit on your board, because you got a tough job ahead of you if we don't solve the space problem and solve it quick. Maybe the end I should really tell you is I stood up here about 3 months ago and said I don't really have any skin in the game because my kids are just graduating, and the truth is I do. I have new neighbors, and they have the cutest 2 kids who are just going to be starting in this school, and they're the cutest kids since mine. And when I talk to them, and they're new to this community now, and they're saying, we moved here because the school system was really good. And I watch what's going on now, and I just think, if they don't resolve this, we got options and we can move. I do have skin in the game because those are the kind of people who one day have to buy, I want to buy my house for a good price. And they moved here because of the schools, and we got to keep it that way. So, thanks for listening.
Thanks for bringing the information forward, Dan. Have a good evening. All right. We are at the topics for action section of the agenda. Tim, you are going to present us with a proposed resolution to retain a law firm to join a class action suit against the WEA Trust.
Yes, I'll give you a little background on this. The suit refers to a federally funded program, and it's called the Early Retirement Reinsurance Program. It was designed in part to help school districts around the state, across the nation, to defer and lower health insurance costs. We were informed that we had by the WEA Trust, Health Insurance Trust, that we had a credit due the school district of about $229,000. We were further informed by the trust that if we stayed with their insurance plan, that we'd be able to get a monthly credit back and collect those monies due us according to their calculations. Of course, you all know we discontinued the trust health insurance back in, beginning at the end of September, and changed over to Health Partners. We collected some of those dollars and then pursued further collection, and were really turned down by the trust. They said, well, you had to stay with us and stay with our insurance to gain all those monies back. Currently, there are about at least 45 other districts in the state that are in a similar situation where they have not received all of the monies due them from the IRP, as we call it, program. And so those 45 districts have, at this point, have retained the services of Foley and Lardner out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Foley is leading the formation of a class action lawsuit on the school district's behalf. Foley has their lead partner, Brian Koss, has a health insurance background. That's one of his areas of practice, and the law firm also is a fairly large law firm, so they've got a depth of knowledge there, and so recommending that you approve the following resolution. The costs involved are pretty typical. It's on a contingent basis, meaning if school districts prevail and get a settlement, we would pay a 33% fee plus some out-of-pocket costs. If school districts do not prevail, there would be no cost to the district. And so, again, we've got about 45 districts at this point that are joining in this action. So, any questions?
Other questions from the board members? So, Tim, can I just reiterate what I think I understand about this process? So the situation is that this ERP is a federally funded program. Federal funds have, in fact, flowed to WEA Trust for the purpose of reducing the premiums paid by school districts, so it becomes a reduced premium for the school districts that were participating. WEA Trust has taken those federal funds on behalf of a number of school districts, of which we're one, but they were not used in our case, and you said 45 other districts. They were not used, in fact, to reduce our premiums.
Right,
They're holding those funds.
That's correct. We've accessed about $57,000, so net, so about $170,000 or so is due the district, according to their calculation.
And as you've talked to, I assume you've talked to the attorneys that have been enlisted by the other school districts in this class action suit or proposed suit. I mean, what are you hearing in terms of the attorney's sense for likelihood of prevailing?
Well, at this point, it's in such an early stage. What they're doing right now is just, as the attorney put it, to quote him, wading through the jurisdictions. It's going to be a lengthy. I think it's going to be a lengthy process of several months before they determine which court will actually hear this case. When I asked about the likelihood of prevailing, he wasn't really sure at this point until they do some additional work and additional findings.
And I assume the payment structure with this firm then would be a percentage of whatever they're able to recover. Is that right?
Yes,
and that would be shared amongst all the districts that are participating.
Right. It's really based on whatever the final determination is of the amount that is due each individual district, and then there would be a 33% fee, which is fairly typical, and then some additional out-of-pocket costs of the firm. If it goes to appellate court, the fee goes up to 40%. But again, there's no cost to the district if the districts don't prevail.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Tim?
Madam President,
Go ahead. Lynn?
Tim, we won't have to pay until we receive our 33%, correct?
That's right. Their fee will come out of the settlement.
And Tom?
Tim, did you give an estimated amount that we're talking about for the district?
Yes, and I'm gonna couch this in saying, as part of this action, they'll be looking into how the trust determined the amount that was due back districts. But according to the trust records, we're due net. We've collected some, but we're due about $170,000 at this point.
That's a gross amount,
that's a gross, right? Prior to
33% or 40%.
That's right.
Are there any other questions? All right. Is there someone who would be willing to make a motion to approve the resolution?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion pursuant to the authority bestowed upon it by Section 120.13, Parent 9M of the Wisconsin statutes. The Hudson School District Board of Education hereby resolves to retain the law firm of Foley and Lardner, LLP, to provide the board with legal services and representation pursuant to the attached letter of engagement dated March 12, 2012.
Okay, motion by Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tim. We are at the consent agenda items. If there is someone who would make a motion to approve the consent agenda items, including the authorization for disbursements for Tim.
Madam President, I move for approval of the consent agenda items and that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $1,643,487.53.
Second.
Second by Mark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda slate is passed. And we are at the committee report section of the agenda this evening. The first item, in Brian Bell's absence, Dan Chernohoy will report on the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had some big shoes to fill for my colleague.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lynn, because of Lynn's absence.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Brian's not
That's
here.
what I meant, not Brian. Anyway, we had a number of items on our agenda. The first topic had to do with student school activity accounts. The school district has a number of student school activity accounts. We just reviewed the management of those accounts, had some discussion about the current policy as it relates to those accounts. And I believe we left it that Tim and his team would review that policy and just see if it still is applicable according or relating to those accounts. So that will probably come back to our committee. Next item, separation of district and booster organizations, finances, similar type of topic. Had the discussion about the distinction between the booster organizations, that quasi-relationship with the school district, but yet a lot of their finances are managed separately, often under a separate tax-exempt entity. Preliminary budget funding. Tim gave us an update on some of the discussions going on at the state legislature and funding issues and special ed vouchers. And I think we just basically got an update on that. Was there anything else, Tim, on that? Okay. Health insurance plan design update. Our current plans are with Health Partners Delta Dental, and I think Tim and the administration is looking at possibly introducing another option for staff employees as it relates to our health insurance, potentially with a higher deductible HSA plan.
Right.
Is that right, Tim?
Right. High deductible coupled with an HSA, health savings account. Yeah.
Okay. So they'll continue to take a look at that and see if it makes sense to include that in our district. And then lastly, we had a discussion on the item that we just approved as it relates to the resolution and litigation with the WEA Trust. I'll entertain any questions, although Lynn is probably more capable of answering those questions.
Are there questions? Hearing none. The next committee report is Learning and Program Development, and bear with me, folks. We had a couple of meaty agenda items when we met this last week. First, we had a report on our English language learners from Corey, Robin Spencer-Beck, and Amy Amberg. That's they really gave us a general update, but I thought a couple of interesting things to share with you is obviously the English language learner work that we're doing ties directly to HSD 2025 and post-secondary success for every student. We currently have 12 languages that are spoken in our schools. The top two are Spanish and Hmong, but they also include some maybe languages that you wouldn't guess, languages like Ukrainian and Swahili. Even Hudson has diversity in our student body, and it's a wonderful thing. And it creates some additional challenges for the administration for the teachers. We also did a gifted and talented update, and Susie Prather and Corey provided some information to the committee when we met. They really talked about the processes that they're using today to identify students for the gifted and talented work, the process that they're using for delivering differentiated curriculum, also the process that they're using today to provide social and emotional support for these students, because that's often a piece that they need, and the professional development of the classroom teachers, which has been a big piece of their focus. Their key goals are really to regularly use multiple measures so that we know what progress is being made, also using increased collaboration with the classroom teachers. And then the next topic that we talked about was online learning, and Sandy Kovach and Laura Love provided some insight into what they're seeing for online learning at the high school. Currently, we offer selected online courses which are done to supplement our current course offerings for things that we don't offer in a traditional classroom setting. As students sign up for online learning, they do a family orientation. There's a parent sign-off. Right now, Hudson School District is partnering with the Wisconsin Virtual School for online offerings. And Sandy, I know, and her team are beginning to look at some full-time online options for our students. And then finally, we spent a little bit of time talking about the state of Wisconsin's waiver application. You may be familiar with the fact that states are now sending in waiver applications to waive the requirements of the current No Child Left Behind requirement of 100% proficiency by 2014. And so there will be some modifications to our own assessments here in Hudson around the state of Wisconsin as we work to implement some of the changes that are associated with the waiver application. Any questions? All right. Next committee update then is Facilities and Grounds. Tom.
The Facilities and Grounds Committee met on March 6th. We had two agenda items. The first being the question about the feasibility of County Road UU, particularly regarding the waste treatment question. And an engineer firm called SEH did a study of this and the potential for a wastewater treatment on that piece of property, an independent wastewater treatment, and came to the conclusion that it really just was not feasible to have a school the size of 2,000 plus students to support a wastewater treatment that's large enough to serve that capacity of students. So secondarily, I think that's primarily the major issue with it. But secondarily, as was mentioned before by the citizen, the topography on the land is just probably too cost prohibitive to really make that work. You know, we did talk about, though, the segment of that property, which is about 23 acres, and the potential for that as a smaller school, and asked the question regarding what size school could that, particularly that 23-acre plot of ground support, and the group responded, the engineer responded with 700 students could be possible. And I think there's more study that could be done with this, but those are some preliminary thoughts and conclusions. So, secondly, we discussed the St. Clair Meadows purchase and the update. Phase 1 study has been done, and really nothing unusual was found there in terms of the information that we were looking at there in terms of utilities and so forth. So I think we're moving on to phase 2, Tim, is that correct? Next, and what that is? Can you give us a little bit of that?
That would be a possibility, but at a future date.
Yeah, at a future date. Secondly, in that within that second agenda item, there was a question from the community that came forward about the operating costs at that site from the point in which we actually take it over to construction period, a construction timeline. And you're going to need to help me with this a little bit, Tim, but what we were looking at was currently the owner now is paying security and utilities to some extent. I believe that they have an actual individual that posts themselves at that site for security purposes. Both Jim Staskill and Tim have done some study regarding to try and answer the question about the cost for operating that in its state until it becomes a construction site. And there were a number of things that was determined in terms of being able to do security differently, probably more of an automated type of security system, and as well as some savings potential, what we believe are some pretty obvious savings potential with utility reductions. To cite an example of that, I think currently the drinking fountains are still on out there, and if we could turn those off, we'll save a considerable amount of money. I think the number that you gave, at least my note tells me that we're looking at, in terms of utility savings, around $70,000. Does that sound correct? I hate to put you on the spot, but I just did.
That would be yes, that would be close.
Okay. Do you want to say anything more in terms of what the estimated cost would be, bottom line, after savings, things like that?
Well, I think and some of those costs, again, are preliminary as we look at, as we continue to look at that, but we had substantial savings, as you mentioned, in the security area, and just really looking at an automated system versus a staff. And also looking at about 50% reduction in total utility costs.
So a total coming to around $70,000 in savings from that.
On the total
utilities,
it's about 70,000 in savings on utilities. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. The last bit of that second agenda was the conceptual drawing that we discussed and the potential of developing that as was requested by an individual or some of the community members. And so you saw that tonight as part of the regular board agenda. So with that, I will entertain any questions.
Madam President.
Lynn.
I don't know if this is for Tim or for Tom, but would we go on and have a phase 2 if the phase 1 didn't indicate any environmental concerns?
The very, very possibly we'd have at a minimum when the building is disturbed or deconstructed, we'd have to have some testing, asbestos testing and that type of thing. So as a possibility, we might do some limited additional testing just to get an idea of what's out there.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Pat.
Okay, this is for Tim. I'm sure I'll be able to answer. Okay, you talked about $70,000 worth of savings. I'm sorry, or 70,000. How much do we have to pay?
Well, like I said, we're still, that number is not exact. We're still working on getting that number down, but it would be somewhere in the $80,000-$90,000 range to pay for utilities and security and some of the maintenance issues.
So that's a year, each year that we would have it before we bill?
Annually, yes.
Okay. So right now they're paying about $150,000 a year then?
About that in utilities, and then more than that for security.
Okay.
So this would be covering the annual cost for security and utilities together.
Oh, well, that's okay. The $150,000 is just utilities, or it's both?
That's what the current owners are paying somewhere in that area now for utilities, and they're paying additionally for the security they have. We're looking at bringing that down total to somewhere under $100,000, and they're spending well over that now.
Okay. So obviously their security has probably been very good, because I've never heard of any incidents out there in the past 10 years. Maybe has there been? I don't know.
There have been some incidents out there of people mining, wiring copper, etc.
Oh.
So there have been some incidents out there.
Okay.
Okay. Mark, Personnel Committee.
Thank you, Barb. The Personnel Committee met last Tuesday, March 6th. We discussed and approved the addition of some 2 high school monitors in response to some increasing discipline and safety issues. This will just be for the remainder of the school year, and then we'll evaluate what we need to do before we go forward. Nancy gave us a 2012-13 staff enrollment update, and I think the one thing I want to note on that in particular, as of the date of that meeting on March 6th, our kindergarten enrollments had already increased 24 students over the close of the registration period, which was about 2.5 weeks previous to that. So just to show you, it's a moving target, and sometimes it's a fast-moving target. We also discussed the conference attendance by our administrative team. This has been one of those areas where, with budget constraints, we've pulled back significantly on what we're offering for our administrators. And the hope is that with the Personnel Committee valuing professional development for our administrators, we're hoping we can restore some of these cuts that have been made recently. Also, discussion about contracting with a private firm for a comparison study of employee compensation for our administrators, taking into account geography, high-performing districts of comparable size, etc., and hopefully offering us some recommendations for our administrative compensation. And lastly, a closed session for disciplinary and personnel matters of a confidential nature. Oh, excuse me, yes. As Ms. Sweet just reminded me, we did table a discussion on policy 50, I crossed it out. Was it 5153, Nancy? 6153. Thank you.
Mary.
I'd just like to add on to Mark's comments about the comparison study and add for our other employee groups that the Human Resource Department is doing a study comparison for support staff and for teachers.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, we are ready to move into a closed session. For those who have joined us this evening, we will not be returning to open session. Thank you for joining us. And if there's a board member that would be willing to make the motion using the language printed on the agenda.
Madam President, I move that we adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statutes 19.85, Parent 1, B, C, and F, to consider disciplinary data and personnel problems of specific employees, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon any person referred to in such data, and preliminary notice of non-renewal.
Motion by Mark. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. We'll have a roll call vote.
Robson, aye.
Holland, aye.
Van Loon and I.
German, aye.
Kaisershot, aye.
We are adjourned to closed session.